Hey guys, I'm back with a new video. It's going to be the first in my series of shopping your stash. So a while ago I was laid off from my job, and since then I had to severely cut back on purchases. So I've been seeing some new cards and new products online, and I've been trying to really figure out how to get the same result with what I already have in my stash. So I'm going to share a card with you today, actually 3 cards. It shows how to use what you might already have to get a new look. So we're starting with the Lawn Fawn stamp set, and this is coloring. I'm just going really quickly through this because I'm not a seasoned Copic colorer. I just watch people online and try and copy what they do. I have the colors here on the screen, and also they're going to be listed in the video description and over on my blog. So if you want to see what colors I used, you can check that out. I just like to start with my lighter color, add in where I think the shadows would be, and then I go over that with my darker color, and then go over with the lighter color the whole area. That gets the paper a little wet so they blend a little bit easier, and then I don't over color any area if you want to keep something more on the light side. And I tried coloring this several times. You'll see in a little bit my first 2 tries. So finally I pulled out my hex chart to see which colors I wanted. I always forget to use that, but it is very helpful. So I got the coordinating dies, and that's a wire cutter I bought just at Home Depot. And I'm cutting out using my Big Shot. You can use any die cutting machine, and you can see all the tape there. That's just to hold all my dies in place. I do have a magnetic platform, but I like the tape. So that's what the end result's going to be. So we're starting with this background die. Now this one I got from Paper Tray Ink, but I believe a few companies sell it, and it's just a horizontal stripe background die. I'm just using my paper piercer to pop it all out. Now this is at 4 times speed, I believe, or maybe even 8. It's just popping it out, nothing hard here. And I'm just using some tape to get out the background parts. And those strips you can save as sentiment strips, and I just keep them in a little bowl on my desk, so when I want a sentiment I just pull out a strip. Now here's where we're going to make the place where our image is going to go. So you will need 2 dies, a bigger one and a smaller one. And you want to make sure your smaller one fits the image you're going to use, but you're going to cut into the background piece with your bigger one. And then here I'm going to make the actual frame. So you just kind of line them up, and we're just going to use the frame part. You'll see it cuts out 2 pieces. So the inside piece we're not going to need right now. The outside piece is what you want, and it fits right in. And you can see how it looks on your card. Now I have it listed on my blog. I saw this from Reverse Confetti. So now I'm just going to use some mono multi-glue to glue it all down to the card stock there. That's Simon Says Cardstock on the left, the fog gray, and this is just Nina Solar White, which is my go-to white cardstock. And I'm using the glue just because I'm going to move it around. You want to make sure you get it lined up on your cardstock piece. So that just helps be able to move it around for a few seconds before it dries. And just press it all down. You want to make sure you really get the area around where your frame's going to go, because you don't want that lifting up. So you just glue down your frame, move it around, make sure it fits in there, and it should pop in like a puzzle piece. You can see to the left, those are my first tries of coloring that image, and I'm just figuring out which sentiment I want to use. So pull that off. I'm going to get out my Misty to help me line it up. Now I should have, if I'd been thinking, stamped my sentiment first before I glued down my white piece, just because the cardstock ends up warping a little bit. I did these cards over several days, so by the time the card dried I put on some glossy accents, so I left it for a couple days and came back to it. So the warping did actually decrease, and it was pretty flat by the time I actually ended up gluing it to my card base. But if you're going to do this and attach it to your card base immediately, I would suggest stamping first and then flattening out the piece and then putting on your white background piece. So I'm just using some Ranger Super White or Super Fine Detail White powder, heat setting it, and then figuring out which piece I want to use. I colored a couple of them. And now I'm just going to stack them. These are my first two tries, and I'm just going to use those to stack behind my finished colored piece, just for a little bit dimension. And the mono multi just helps me get it so they're all perfectly stacked together. And then just press it down, and that stuff dries pretty quickly, so you don't have to leave it for 20 minutes or anything. And I'm just going to figure out where I want it on my card. Just kind of making sure it's a little bit straight. I don't want it too wonky. There's my card base. Again, that's Nina Solar White. That's the 110 pound. And I'm just going to use Memento ink again to stamp my sentiment, just so the blacks match. And that one just says Home Sweet Home. It's from the same stamp set. And I'm just going to glue my image onto the card, and card 1 will be done. So as I was saying, I've been really thinking about all my purchases now. I've had a lot of stuff. I had some garage sales. If you follow my blog, I did the KonMari method with my craft items. So I did get rid of a lot of unnecessary items, and I don't want to add too much unless I know for sure I'm really going to use it. So by using this background die and then adding in a couple other shapes, you can get a lot of use out of it, more than I actually thought when I first purchased it. So now I'm just using some ATG adhesive, and I'm going to glue my finished piece to my card base. I'm using a lot of ATG for some reason, but you don't really need that much. That stuff's pretty strong. And I'm using a little bit of glue just so I have just a little bit of wiggle room in case I don't get it on straight. I don't know about you, but sometimes I cannot line my projects up super straight, so that just gives me a little bit of wiggle room because once you press it down into the ATG, it's not coming up. And there's card 1 all finished. Now once you figure out how to cut that background piece, doing any more is pretty easy. You just have to remember to use the larger die to cut out the background, and then make your frame, but make sure your image fits in the smaller one. Now I'm going to show you how to do it using a heart die. Now these heart and circle dies are just from Hero Arts. They're their Infinity die collection. They're very, very good dies, and I do use those all the time, so I do recommend those. Now I'm using a gray cardstock piece. This is the Simon Says Smoke color, I believe, but you can see in a little bit I'm going to change my mind. I just found that was a little too dark for the image. So here I'm just doing the same thing. I already cut out my background piece, the horizontal stripes, and now I'm using the larger of the two hearts to cut into the background piece. I just made sure it cut all the way through, so before I removed it, if I had to run it through again, but it did cut the first time. My plates are a little warped, and the bottom plate's heavily used, so sometimes I don't get a perfect cut depending on where it lays. So now I'm going to cut my frame using the same color as the stripe background paper. So that's the Simon Says Smoke color again. And I'm going to attach my bigger heart, and then I'm going to lay my smaller heart in there. I just eyeball it to make sure they look about the same on either side, so my frame looks good. Just run it through again. Now any die cut machine would work. You don't need a Big Shot. That's just the one I've had for years now. So again, you just need your frame piece. You don't need the inside heart, but you can save the inside heart for future projects, and it just fits right in again. And that's the inside of my card base. That's a set from Darcy. I really like that sentiment. It's from a song by Edward Sharpe and the Magnetic Zeros called Home. It's a really good song if you want to check it out if you have not heard it before. So we do sing that all the time in my house. So that's a quote we really love. Now you can see I want just the home part of the sentiment, and I didn't want to cut the sentiment strip apart, so I just used some Versamark ink on the home, and I masked off the rest of the sentiment. And even though it's hanging off the Missy, it still stamps fine. And again, I'm using the same white embossing powder. And that is more fog cardstock there. But again, later on you're going to see I change out my mind. So I'm just going to heat set it again. And it did warp, but you could send it through your Big Shot machine with just the cutting plates, or your die cutting machine with just the cutting plates, and it'll flatten it out. Or you can set a book on it. And just make sure you, when you attach your background piece there, you got the right side up. So here's my new card base. I already stamped it. So that's just Neenah Solar White, and I'm using Stampin' Up! Sahara Sand cardstock and ink. So I just did the same thing. I just recut a new piece. And I glued it with mono multi again, making sure especially the edges are glued down well to the card base because you don't want them lifting up. And then there's my frame. I'm just popping that in. Yeah, I like the lighter color of the Sahara Sand with the coloring I did with my Copic markers. And I'm just going to pop that one up with some foam tape. So the background piece is directly attached to the card base. So this is going to be the only thing with dimension. And then here I'm going to add in some hearts for the chimney smoke. And I cut those out of Stampin' Up! Blush Blossom, which is discontinued. But you can use any light pink, any light peach cardstock you happen to have, or just color them with some markers or watercolor, whatever you have. Just a nice light color so it goes with the rest of the image. And I'm just going to attach them with some mono multi, though using a more clear glue would probably be your better choice here. And I just use my tweezers to help me line it up. And I do have a katana here to help pick up the small pieces, but you know, you can use your tweezers, your fingers, whatever you got. I'm sorry about my hair. I tried to cut out most of that through the video, but some of it snuck in. So in here you can even leave out the hearts. I just thought it added a cute little playful thing since I do have the heart frame. And here a sentiment, home is where the heart is, would work really well. I thought about that after the fact. I'm just going to attach those two down, and I'm going to use more glossy accents. I use glossy accents on the windows, and then I'm going to use it on the hearts here. And also on my colored image, I did use some white gel pen for some accent, and then I used a black glaze pen on the door handles just to give them a little pop. So here's the glossy accents, and like I said, I'm just going to do the windows and the hearts. And I'm using the big bottle. I do have a little bottle with a smaller tip, which would work just as well here. But whatever you have, make it work for you. And again, this is at, I think, 2 times speed, so it did take me a little longer to get that placed. And now this is the third card. Now, as you can see, the background piece, it's popped up with 3M foam tape. And I attached the image directly to the card panel. And that's fog cardstock again. And I just stamped with Simon Says Stamp smoke ink, just because that shows up a little bit better on white. And here I'm just using a Power Tab mini tape, since I'm going to tape it directly to the card base. I don't really need to move it around too much. So I'm attaching the whole piece to the card base right now. I'm just using my desk to line it up, pressing it down, and I already stamped the inside there. It says welcome. So, and I colored the smoke with just a Prismacolor pencil. So there's all 3 cards again. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you have any questions, you can leave me a comment or check out my blog. I'm going to have some more information about all the products I use. Hope you guys have a great day. Thanks for watching.